Hey everyone, welcome to today's wonderful words. Today's are from Einstein, no less. I've used them on the back of Free, my book about choice and free will. So, honestly, I cannot understand what people mean when they talk about the freedom of the human will. I have a feeling, for instance, that I will something or other, but what relation this has with freedom, I cannot understand at all. Yeah. So obviously, it would be nice to interview him for this and get his, what was behind those words. But from what I can see, or what these words mean to me, is that there is a feeling of willing something. So there's a feeling of choosing something. If waiter comes in and says tea or coffee, I will say tea always. But it looks like a choice. It looks like I had the freedom to choose. So there's a mini me inside here somewhere, independently thinking which is best, tea or coffee. I'll have tea. And that's the feeling we have. We have the feeling of being an independent, objective decider, a chooser, and that's what we say is free will, is human agency, autonomy, capacity to decide for ourselves. That's what we think free will is. But as Einstein says, isn't it a great way you can say that? What relation this has with freedom, I cannot understand at all. And there's the kicker, isn't it? Because we think this capacity to choose is coming from freedom. Don't we really think that, don't we? Like, it's just so embedded in the way of in the belief about ourselves and in the relationship to action, that our choices come from freedom to choose. And what we're considering right at the heart of this conversation is that there is zero freedom to choose, that there essentially is no chooser, there's no decider, that all decisions, including tea or coffee, including where to live, including who to live with, including which word is going to come next, including which hand movement's going to happen, including what I'm going to have for dinner, including what job I'm going to do, including whether I stay or leave my spouse, all of it is coming from a programmed system of belief and learned responses, learned convictions about how to behave, about what's required from us, about what makes us happy, loved, successful. It's a program. Every single microscopic action or sound, glance, even programmed. None of it's coming from free will. None of it is independently, objectively assessed. It can't, how can it be? How can there be any independence and objectivity of thought when everything is learned, including the language with which we would articulate that thought? And this is the, because when we're in this conversation from the perspective of a totally believed idea of myself as a entity that is independent, that is separated out somehow from everything else, so from learning, from intelligence, from wholeness, from consciousness. There's me here on the isolated out. And I'm in this conversation to try to find wholeness, but yet that idea of myself as separate is so robust, it's so believed, it's so it so much looks like securing that is how I will survive, how I'll flourish. And so here I am in this conversation about free will, or I'm listening to this podcast from that perspective of myself as a separate entity. And then to hear what I've just said, to hear that there is no free will, because there is no separate entity, independent, objective, isolated, that feels like death. Because the whole reason I'm here is to stabilize that, secure that, make that be loved and successful and admired and happy, free. So that's the obstacle to this central deep understanding that there is no chooser, there is no doer. From the perspective of separation, we have to shut down. And people say that, you know, on my courses, like they literally stop being able to hear, or that they have this urge to get off a webinar because it's so threatening that, like, we close down that believed idea that survival is going to be found through separation is so tenacious that everything has to close down when that gets threatened. So thank you, Einstein. Yeah, and for saying it in such a beautiful way. Yeah, I'll read it again. Honestly, I cannot understand what people mean when they talk about the freedom of the human will. I have a feeling, for instance, that I will something or other. So choices are being made, but they're just not being made from freedom. But what relationship this has with freedom, I cannot understand at all. Yeah. So choices being made all the time, every next word, every gesture, every movement, everything is a choice being made by the system out of a huge, infinite series of options. But yet that choice is dictated and decided by the program, by whatever has been learned, by whatever's understood, by whatever version of reality this self appears to be and what appears to be out there. That's what will dictate the behavior, the words, the actions, the responses, the reactions. So ironically, the understanding of no free will is the only space in which freedom is can even begin to be understood. Irony, but cool. Yeah. Thank you. Lots of love. Bye.